Gyosan knelt before the king, pleading with him not to disregard virtuous and talented men simply because they were born out of wedlock. It is this mindset that deprives us of capable people, he argued. His plea was witnessed by Gwarsong, who stood in silence, observing the scene. Later, Gyosan was seen enjoying a feast with his companions, most of whom were also children born out of wedlock. In the midst of their gathering, Gwarsong arrived, seeking an audience with him. Gyosan, smiling, invited him to join the table and discuss the matter there. However, Gwarsong refused, stating that what he wished to discuss concerned national affairs and should not be debated among illegitimate children. Gyosan's expression darkened. "That is too harsh," he replied. Gwarsong remained firm. "What you are doing is improper. The structure of this nation cannot be altered so easily, and you should abandon your foolish dreams of obtaining a high position." Gyosan, undeterred, countered, "On the contrary, I believe that the passage of time calls for the reform of outdated traditions." Yet in the end, it seemed that Gwarsong had managed to subdue Gyosan, just as he had tamed the wild horse he now rode. The woman riding beside him watched in curiosity and asked how he had done it. It turned out that Gwarsong had led his horse to a secluded place where he had once placed Gyosan. It was no wonder that a nobleman like Gyosan could mingle so easily with commoners. He had lived among them. Gyosan had once used a poor woman's washed skirt to catch a large number of fish. Instead of keeping the fish for himself, he sold some to buy the woman a new skirt and used the rest to prepare a meal for everyone, sharing his finest recipe. The people had gathered around, enjoying the feast together, their laughter filling the air. Now, Gwarsong had come to see for himself how Gyosan had lived in this place. He observed the surroundings, silently taking in the reality of Gyosan's past. After witnessing Gyosan freely mingling with the villagers, Gwarsong's expression darkened with disappointment. It became clear that the people here treated Gyosan with special privilege, an order from His Majesty himself. Gwarsong's voice was sharp as he spoke. "So, you openly admit to conspiring with an exiled criminal?" Gyosan, unbothered by the accusation, turned his attention to an old man sitting alone, refusing to eat with the others. With a quiet smile, he approached and handed the man a fish. The old man looked at him with an odd expression. "You spend so much time pitying others," he muttered. "Yet your own life is hanging by a thread." Gyosan frowned, confused by the cryptic words. But before he could ask, the old man continued, his gaze steady. "This little fish you've given me will save you today." Nearby, some women who had been observing Gyosan quickly exchanged nervous glances. One of them leaned toward him and whispered, "You shouldn't associate with that old man. He's strange. If you stay close to him too long, misfortune will follow." Before Gyosan could react, a sudden commotion broke out. A group of officials appeared, their leader stepping forward with a commanding presence. His voice rang out with authority. "Gyosan, you are a criminal and will be placed in the barbed wire prison." The air grew tense. Gyosan, still standing beside the old man, finally understood. His freedom had just come to an end. It turned out that Gyosan's real name was Haogyeon. At this moment, he was strictly forbidden from stepping outside his residence. Determined to leave, he attempted to slip out, but the guards were swift in blocking his way. His every move was watched closely, making escape impossible. Before long, Gwarsong arrived at his quarters, standing in the dimly lit room with a knowing smirk. "A man as full of spirit as you," he mused, "wasting away in a windowless chamber, all alone. I doubt you'll last even 3 days in here." He paused, studying Gyosan's expression before adding, "This will only end when His Majesty summons you, but that is a big if." Then, with a glint of mischief in his eyes, Guosong leaned in slightly. However, you could make His Majesty call for you. Intrigued, Gyozan's eyes lit up. A spark of energy returned to him as he stepped forward. What does His Majesty need? He asked eagerly, ready to seize any opportunity that might grant him freedom. Guosong suggested something that seemed morally questionable, something Gyozan would never agree to. Without hesitation, Gyozan shook his head. I won't do it. Guosong sighed, his expression darkening. Are you really willing to live like this forever? He asked, his voice laced with warning. Gyozan hesitated for a moment before responding, and if I do as you say, will I truly be free? But Guosong didn't answer. Instead, his gaze shifted toward a group of children approaching the area. His expression hardened. What are you doing here? He barked at them. If you come near the walls of this prison, you'll be whipped. The children flinched, their innocent faces filled with fear. Before they could retreat, Gyozan stepped forward protectively. They're just children, he said calmly. They kept me company during my exile. Guosong's anger flared. Even in Hanyang, you surrounded yourself with illegitimate children. And now, here you are, mingling with the lowest of the low. His voice dripped with frustration. You never learn. With that, he turned on his heels and walked away. But before leaving, he threw one final remark over his shoulder. You'll regret it if you refuse my offer. Despite the barbed wire walls separating them, Gyozan approached the children, smiling as they eagerly called out to him. You promised to continue the story at sunset, one of them reminded him. Gyozan paused, realizing he had completely forgotten. With a chuckle, he settled himself near the wall and began telling the next part of the tale. As he spoke, the story took an amusing turn, seemingly mirroring the situation around him, especially the position of the guards. One particular guard, listening with his arms crossed, narrowed his eyes as he realized Gyozan's words felt strangely pointed. And then, Gyozan continued, his voice animated, the Commissioner General, thinking that just because he was big, he could do whatever he pleased. The moment he said it, the guard stiffened. He was, coincidentally, quite large. Sensing the tension, Gyozan grinned playfully. Oh, don't take it personally, he said lightly. I wasn't talking about you. It's just part of the story. Still, the guard's expression remained sour, while the children burst into laughter. Encouraged by their reaction, Gyozan exaggerated his gestures, acting out scenes with flair. His lively performance captivated them, their giggles and cheers filling the air. For a moment, it felt as if the harsh walls between them didn't exist at all. Back in his room, Gyozan sat down and began writing the continuation of the story for the children. However, before long, his thoughts started drifting toward food. He was starving. No matter how hard he tried to focus on the story, his mind kept wandering to all the dishes he craved. Frustrated, he muttered to himself, "Fine. I'll write down everything I want to eat." And so, he did. He scribbled page after page, listing every meal, every delicacy that came to mind. Before he knew it, he had written so much that it could almost be a book. Amused by his own hunger-driven creativity, he decided to give it a title. In the middle of the night, Gyozan was jolted awake by a strange noise. His instincts kicked in, and without thinking, he grabbed his newly written book, holding it like a weapon, as he cautiously stepped out of his room. The corridor was dimly lit, shadows stretching along the walls. He glanced around, his heart pounding, prepared for the worst. Then, he froze. A figure emerged from the darkness. For a split second, fear gripped him, but as the figure stepped closer, relief washed over him. It was a woman, someone he knew well. "You?" he whispered, lowering his book. She nodded, urgency written all over her face. "I needed to see you. Your friends, they're in danger." Before delivering the warning, she hesitated. I begged you to accept Hwasong's advice, she reminded him. Gyosan sighed, already knowing where this conversation was going. I won't, he said firmly. But, I've already accepted my fate, he cut in. I'll live the rest of my life here. His words were calm, but they carried a finality that made the woman's heart ache.